Graham Stevens.
Well, if you want a man to do the job, it's often said, get somebody who doesn't really want to do it. Like many people, I campaigned against a directly elected mayor, mainly for the reason we already have government in the West Midlands. We already have councils, council leaders. This isn't an extra layer of government. It's an extra layer of fog designed to create a circumstance whereby leaders of local councils can do deals with a Chancellor of the Exchequer operating under austerity guidelines in order that they can carry out cuts to welfare and social services just as they're continuing to do. I'm standing because I want to campaign against that. I want to abolish that. I want to create people's assemblies in every borough so there's a much more connected kind of democracy between the professional politicians and ordinary people.
Okay, Jessica reporting there. Let's get on to our next question, which comes from Mohammed Ali, and it's on transport. Your question.
Evening, panel. Investing in transport is fundamental if we are to get West Midlands moving again. What are your plans in terms of reducing congestion, especially on our motorways, and your views about nationalising the M6 toll?
Graham Stevenson, you think public ownership is the fundamental answer to our transport policy?
I do, and I've always said a communist is a socialist who really means what he says, and I really mean what I say when I say
Who do you have in mind when you say that?
Not only nationalise the M6 toll, but also bring into public ownership, owned by the local councils, every single bus company in the West Midlands. Now, you don't need to pay huge sums of money to nationalise the M6 toll. We could do what government did in 1946. The departing Chancellor of the Exchequer only paid off the last bit of it quite recently. The Bank of England was bought by providing low-interest, long-term bonds. That could be done in this case. We wouldn't have to pay a penny now. We could defer it until later. We're against toll roads. We're against making people pay twice to use something which they already pay for.
Yeah, so I have to sort of ask whether it is actually feasible, given the need for legislation.
You don't mind me saying, you seem obsessed with the M6 toll.
Yeah.
Most people, most voters in the West Midlands are worried about the absence of bus services. Yeah. We were told that deregulating and privatising bus services would mean more buses and they'd be cheaper and they'd be more plentiful. No, they're not. All that happened is that they swapped public monopoly for private monopoly. We need a complete, not just a complete freeze on fares, we need a massively reduced fares before we can start ordering people not to use their cars.
Okay, I'm going to move it on to the next question now, which is about housing, which is again another of the prime responsibilities of the Metro Mayor, so-called, although some public policy analysts would like the Mayor to have an even bigger role than the one suggested at the moment. The question comes from Dan Jones. Dan Jones, your question on housing.
Hi. How would the Mayor ensure that more affordable housing is created across the region without negatively impacting on green space?
Okay, Graham Stevenson.
We shouldn't be building on the green belt. We should build on the rich belt. I mean, fancy asking a bunch of accountants, financiers, estate agents, developers, what shall we do to develop our housing and building policy in the West Midlands? Well, of course they're going to tell us the land that they want, the land that they don't currently have, the land they prefer to have. Now, what I'd like to see is a massive expansion of council house building so that every single 16 to 35-year-old has a home that they want, and that every single 40-plus-year-old is paying reasonably for mortgages and/or rents. That's the kind of massive change that we need. We can only do it by introducing a land tax and by controlling the land in our area.
Let's go back to our... Well, now I'm going to move on to our next question, who is Carola Langer, just in front of me here. And you have a question about the early impact of the new Mayor, don't you?
Yeah, indeed. It's a new role, as we said, and I'm just interested, what will have changed for me or my children after your first 100 days in office?
Graham Stevenson.
Well, the general election actually creates the possibility for addressing the issue of municipal ownership of the bus and tram sector, because the Tories have currently got a bill in the Lords which will probably fail, which would prevent that from happening. Very undemocratic, not much known about. If, therefore, it's possible to proceed after the election of a mayor with the municipalisation of buses. I think major companies like LTI, which produces the electric taxi, owned by a huge Chinese conglomerate, would be very interested in the manufacturing of electric buses and electric trams. Instead of bringing them from Italy on a low loader across a motorway all the way across Europe,
You're spending a lot of money on this public, so there's a lot of money being consumed, isn't there?
Yeah, well, we've already worked out that there could well be the introduction of a West Midlands bond. But, you know, one of the things about this crap devolution deal is that the mayor would need to go back to whatever government we have after the general election and say it needs to be renegotiated. Now, before we can get people out of their cars, we have to provide massive carrots, and we can only do that with really serious money.
Andy Street. Well, as I said, we are going to move on, and it is indeed Brexit and all the issues and challenges that go with that, the burning issue of the day. Da Vinci Warmington has our next question on Brexit.
How will you use Brexit to boost the economy?
Now, that is the question for you. Graham Stevens.
Well, until 2009, the UK had its own seat at the World Trade Organization, and that was consolidated into an EU seat, dominated by a committee in which France and Germany run things. The next thing, a trade deal with China was concluded, whereby solar panels were supplied by the EU, solar panels to China for the massive emerging market of air conditioning, the big thing in China. And in consequence, factories in the West Midlands closed, but factories in Germany expanded. Now, I think it's possible to make a change. I mean, I spent half a lifetime as president of the European Transport Workers Federation. I've been in the EU, I know what they do, I know how it's all stitched up. And I negotiated with transnational corporations like LTI and Macquarie, which have been mentioned today. And I think it's possible to work on the fact that the EU needs us as much as we need them. But the world needs us even more. I think we can get a revived manufacturing capacity in the West Midlands on the back of Brexit.
All right, let's... Well, that clearly struck a chord with our audience. I'd be very interested to move it on to quite a pointed question, actually, and one which is often bandied around, either fairly or unfairly. It's from Nigel Waldron, and it's about Birmingham's place in the world. Nigel Waldron.
Thank you. Many people feel that Birmingham have lost its second city status to Manchester. One of you candidates will be successful in hopefully putting Birmingham back on the map, and I'd like to know how you propose to do it.
OK, Graham, as a Coventrian, are you bothered about where Birmingham is on? Are you bothered about where Birmingham sits on the map?
I moved from Coventry to Birmingham in 1972, so hopefully I'm an immigrant that's accepted.
These things die hard, though, don't they?
But, yeah, I mean, what's pretty evident to me is that the European Union has treated us as a declining region. We've got lots of nice things in the city centre in Birmingham. You know, I know people who say, oh, you come from Birmingham, that's a bit of a crap place, isn't it? That's a bit of a... Oh, no, it's changed a lot recently. It looks really good. Yeah, we've got lots of nice glitzy stores and statues in the city centre. But the districts, the outlying districts, are not doing as well. And we need much more into education, into training, in helping young people get a ladder on life. And that's really where it counts. That's what I want to see out of this process. It's a devolution deal that hasn't really done well for Birmingham. And if it does what it seems to be trying to do, to make Birmingham the dominant partner in the West Midlands Alliance, it won't do well for all the other boroughs as well, including my beloved Coventry.
Andy Street, Graham talks